next we're going to actually add the ability to fire a blaster shot from our enemy AI. Now the process for doing this is exactly the same as the creation of a turret, which I would have done in the beginner series. So I'll quickly go through this again. If you feel like I'm going through this a little bit too quickly, feel free to go back to the turret section, the shooter section from the beginner series, because I'll go over in a lot more depth there. So the first thing we're going to have to do is create the blaster shot for our droid to fire. So I'm going to go into my blueprints folder, my blueprints, and I'm going to add and import a new blueprint class. And this time it's just going to be an actor, so click actor. And I'm going to call this blaster shot. There it is, blaster shot right there. And open it up. So the first thing I'm going to add is a sphere collision. So type in collision and click sphere collision, and you'll have this circular transparent object here. Now first things first, let's drag this onto the default scene route, so this now becomes the route of our actor. Once we've done that, I'm going to add component. I'm going to say static mesh. There it is, static mesh there, and I'm going to call this blaster shot. In the static mesh section here, just find a sphere. And there we go. There is my blaster shot. Now, that doesn't look much like a blaster shot, so let's change this just a little bit. Let's pull it down. Let's bring it right the way down there, so it's a lot thinner. Go. And let's bring that in just a little. Okay, so that's a little bit more appropriate for a blaster shot. Still a little bit too chubby there. There we go. That's about right. It's almost central as well. There we go. So that's about right. So let's just compile that and spawn that in a second and let's see how big that is. Okay, so there we go. That's the size of the blaster shot that's going to be fired. A little bit too big. So go back in. And I'm going to make that smaller. Again, make it a little bit shorter. Bring that in. Now there's no right or wrong way for you to make your blaster shot. It's completely down to your personal preference. So as soon as I'm happy with my one here, I'm going to finish up, but you keep working on yours. That's a bit better. Quite small, and that's going to move quite fast, so that should be fine. So once you're happy with the size of this, we're going to bring down the size of the sphere, because this is going to be the hitbox. In fact, let's rename that from sphere to hitbox. So if you click on the sphere, or the hitbox in this case now, we can pull down the radius here, and we want it to be around about the same size as the thickest part of our bullet, or blaster shot in this case, which is about right. There we go. Now if you remember, the blaster shot or the bullet is always going to travel in the X direction, towards the X direction. Now you can see from down here, this is facing in the X direction, so I know it's going to go down that way, towards that way. So I'm going to pull this back to about there. So once this collision box hits you, the bullet can then destroy. It doesn't need to be on this thick part, it's going to be around about here. Going to compile that. Let's just double check that's fine. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, I'm then going to add a material to this. So I know that I've already got a red glow, I believe, ready. Yeah, a slight red glow. That should be fine. Let's have a look. Do I need it brighter? No, that's fine for me. For the sake of the video, actually, let's just quickly make one. So I'm going to go to my materials folder. I'm going to right click material. I'm going to call it blaster glow. I'm going to hold 3 and click. Hold M and click. Hold 1 and click. Attach that to B. Attach that to A. And plug that into emissive color. Now I'd like this to be red, like that. And I'm going to turn this up to about 25. There we go. Let's try that one. So this is my blaster glow. I already had a bullet glow there actually, which is very similar. So go back to my blueprints, into my blaster shot. Let's apply the blaster glow. So that's now my blaster glow, and that's what the bullet's going to look like. A little bit of different color red to that, but I think I quite like that actually. So that's going to be my blaster shot there. Now the next component I'm going to add here, and the last component I'm going to add here, is add component. I'm going to say projectile movement. There it is. I'm going to leave the name as it is. So now when I play this, you can see it's now got physics. It just drops to the floor. So to quickly change that, click on projectile movement, and over here we got all our settings. So in projectile movement, the initial speed, let's set that to, let's say 500 for now. So 500. I want the max speed to also be 500. And as this is a laser, it's a blaster bolt, it doesn't have any mass, I don't want it to be affected by gravity. So I'm going to turn the projectile gravity scale to 0. So let's compile that and let's have a look what happens now. There it goes. So 500 is a relatively slow speed. I should be slowly catching that, which I am. But you can see that that's now working and it's just continuing onwards. Right now it's not going to do anything, it's going to pass through everything, so let's change that. Back into my blaster shot, and I'm going to click on hitbox. Once you're in hitbox, go to the right side and you should find the collision menu down here. Now I'd like the collision preset to change, and I'm going to change it to custom, and I'll bring up all these different options here. Now the only thing that I'd like it to block is, let's have a look, let's say destructible, just block that. And it's going to overlap everything else. That should be fine. We're going to leave it like that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set up, actually if we block by world static as well actually, so we don't want to go through walls. So block world static there, and destructible there, and overlap the rest. Once we've done that, we can go into event graph. Now I'm going to leave these just for a second. I'll delete these two actually, just leave event begin play. And what we're going to do, we're going to right click our hitbox. Right click, add event, and we're going to say add on component begin overlap. Now when we overlap something, what's going to happen? So we're going to pull a strand out, and we're going to simply cast to Jedi. Because right now this is the only thing we wanted to check. And pull the other actor into the object. So has it hit our character? If it has, we're simply going to say apply damage. The damage actor is going to be our Jedi. And we'll apply, let's say 50 damage. And then we want to destroy the actor. Destroy actor. So this will keep going until it overlaps our player. And when it overlaps our player, it'll apply some damage and destroy the actor. So let's put a little print string in there just to check. Say hit. Let's give it a go. Okay, so I'm going to start by changing where that bullet spawns to over here. Let's turn around. There we are. You see at the top left there, the bullet hit me. I've got a droid standing right beside me. So that's applied damage to my character now, and destroyed itself, which is perfect. Let's go back in. Now, when that hit me, let's move along here. So, past that comes, and when we turn the speed up for this, it's going to start going on. I'm not going to be able to catch this, and it'll go on forever. In fact, that's hit the tree actually, so it won't go on forever, but it'll actually stop there. So I'd like to put some things in place to stop that from happening, because right now that's just staying there, nothing's happening. So the first and easiest way to do this, pull a strand from your event begin play, say delay, and we're going to say delay for, let's say 5 seconds. after 5 seconds, it's simply going to destroy the actor. So if your bullet is moving for more than 5 seconds, it's going to assume it hasn't hit anything, and it's going to automatically destroy itself. There it goes. Off it goes. Now that's going to be faster later on, so it won't just be very noticeable. So that's ready to go. The next one is I'm gonna check if it's stopped. Now if the bullet has stopped, it means it's hit something. So I'm gonna also destroy the actor. So let's get that tick back. Event tick. There we are. And I'm gonna get a branch. Branch there. And if this is true, I'm gonna destroy the actor. So set that up first. But first we got to think, right, is what true? So I'm going to move this down just a little bit to give me some space. I'm going to say get velocity. There it is there, get velocity. So get the target or the actor's velocity. I'm going to pull a strand from here and I'm going to get the vector length. So just type in vector length there. Now this gives us a float value for the velocity. So I'm going to say pull a strand from there, and I'm going to say less than, which is shift and the comma, and float less than float. And I can say if the float is less than 10, plug that in. So what that basically means is if this bullet, if this blaster shot is moving or stop moving, destroy it. So as we saw before, it won't get stuck on the tree anymore. It'll simply destroy itself as soon as it stops and hits something. And that should be pretty much done for the bullet for now. So I'm going to just go down, I'm going to get rid of this print string, and I'm going to reconnect that up. So that bullet is ready to go. The one thing I'm going to change, I'm going to go into projectile movement, and I'm going to turn this up quite a lot. I'm going to say 1500 for the initial and the maximum speed. Compile. Let's play. That might have gone already straight past me. There it goes. So that's a little bit better. That's faster. It's a faster blaster shot. There it goes. In fact, I could do with potentially moving that up a little bit more again. I won't for now. What I have noticed though is my blaster shot's a little bit thin. So I'm going to stretch out just a little bit. There, it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so turn around. There goes the blaster shot. And it automatically destroys because it hit that tree there. Perfect. So I'm just going to delete that because I don't want that just floating around. Now rather than that floating around and just randomly spawning, I'd like my droid to fire that as soon as the droid actually sees me. So to do that, we need to spawn the bullet from the droid when I'm standing in front of it. So let's go into the droid blueprint. Here we go. So we're going to use the tick for this. So what that's basically going to do, it's going to check every single frame whether or not the character is standing in front of that enemy blueprint. So let's right click and say event tick. There it is. And what we're going to use is something called a sphere trace. So pull a strand out of event tick and search sphere trace by channel. There it is there. And you get this here. So this is going to look in front of a location, and it's going to check where it's going to check what is in front of it, or if something is in front of it. So before we do this, we're going to actually give it something to look from. And I'm going to look from the tip of the blaster here. Because if something's in front of the blaster, then that means that surely you should be able to hit it. So I'm going to click add component. And I'm going to add a scene. So just type in scene, is this utility here. Scene. And I'm going to call this blaster source. Pull it up. And I'm just going to make sure that it's in line, you can see here, with the blaster. Now in theory, I'd like the blaster shot to spawn right there. However, our blaster shot is quite big, so if it spawns there, what's going to happen is it's probably going to spawn inside the robot there and potentially damage the robot, or just stop or despawn. So I'm going to pull it a good little bit out. I'm going to pull it to about there. In reality, the blaster shot's going to be moving so quickly that you're not going to see that it spawns a little bit away anyway, so you'll be fine. So make sure that your bullet source or your blaster source is far enough away from your enemy AI that it doesn't actually destroy itself straight away. Once you've done that, back to the event graph. And we're going to use this bullet source. Now I'm going to go a little bit over here because this is going to be quite a lot of code. I'm going to pull the blaster source in. There it is. And simply I'm going to pull a strand from it and say get world location. There it is. And that's going to be the starting point. Nice and easy. Straightforward. I now need to tell it where to end. So pull a strand from that. And this time I'm going to say get world rotation. And from that, get forward vector, because we need to know which direction to be looking in. Now from this forward vector, I'm going to pull a strand and I'm going to say multiply, or in this case, the asterisk above your 8 key. And we're going to do a vector multiplied by a float. And we're going to say 3000. So we want it to look 3000 units in front of itself. I'm then going to pull a strand from your get world rotation, which is the top one here. Pull it over here and simply say plus, which is the plus symbol, not the word. And we're going to do vector plus vector. There it goes. And plug our multiplication into that, like so. And we're then going to plug that into the end. So we've now got a starting point and an ending point for where this droid is looking to see where our character is. So just take a second, make sure your code is exactly like mine is there, because there's a couple of different things. Make sure that you've got a multiplication box here, or multiplication node here, and a plus or addition node there. Now we're going to change the sphere, so the trace channel, from visibility to camera, because that's what our character currently is, just a camera. So we're going to change that. And that should be it. That's all the setup we need. We now need to check what it is that we've actually detected. And that's checked by this out hit here. So right click it and split struct pin. And suddenly, rather than just one pin, you've got over a dozen. And the one we're looking for is out hit actor. So pull a strand from that and just say equals, an equal object. And we're going to plug into the second one, get player character. So we're saying if it's the player character we've hit, pull a strand from the top there, just do a quick branch and plug the condition in there. If we've hit the character, if we've seen the character, we need to fire the bullet, fire the blaster shot. Now this is already a big chunk of code here, so I'm going to actually make a second function, a second event for the process of firing a blaster shot. So just under here, I'm going to say custom event, and we're going to call this fire blaster. Fire blaster. Nice and easy. Now we're going to say, let's pull a strand from here. Let's say do once first, because we don't want this to repeatedly fire. And after the do once, pull a strand, and we're going to say spawn actor from class. There it is, spawn actor from class. Here we go. And in here we're going to find our blaster shot. There it is. So this is going to spawn a blaster shot. Now we need to know which direction this is going to fire in. Oh, sorry, not direction. Where is this going to fire from? So I'm going to pull the blaster source in again. I'm going to say get world location. I'm going to right click the spawn transform here and split the struct pin. I'm going to pull location in there. I'm going to pull another strand from blaster source, get world rotation, and plug that in there. Now the way I've done this is a little bit more complicated than it could have been. I could have, for example, just got a strand from there and say get world transform and plug that directly in without splitting the struct. However, I've done it this way because often your blaster source here may be attached to, let's say, your droid body. Now that droid body's been made smaller, which means that the scale of that droid is smaller, and so is your blaster source. which means that you would accidentally spawn a smaller bullet in. So by doing this, you get the location and the rotation, but the scale stays as a 1 because it's set to 1 here. That will probably save you from having issues further down the line. Okay, once that's done, we're going to delay. And this is up to you, the value that you put in here. This is the amount of time that it's going to wait before firing again. So I'm just going to say 1 second. It can only fire once every second. And I'm going to pull that round and attach it to the reset pin in the do once node. There we go. And that should be done. So let's group this up. So group that, press C, and this is firing blaster shot. Pull this down. I'm going to go back to the sphere trace, the tick section currently. And there's one thing we need to do. On the true value here, we just need to say fire blaster, which is going to call this little event, this little function down here. And I'm then going to highlight all this, press C, and say detect player. So this is grouped nicely. I'm not sure why that's not in there. There we go. Okay, nice and neat. And that should be, fingers crossed, working. So let's compile that. Let's have a little look. There we are, straight away you can see that's now following me, and when it sees me, it's firing a blaster at me. I can use these trees to try and dodge it, and it's going to try and path around them. But as soon as it sees me, it'll fire a blaster shot at me. Which is perfect. That's working perfectly. So because of the speed of the droid, I can outrun the droid, but it can still shoot at me, so it's still a threat. As we can see from earlier, if I run down here, wait for it to get to me. I go in here. It's going to lose interest and it's going to try and path around to me. So there's little ways you can avoid this this droid. Realistically, I imagine that's doing that either because of the steps here or because the gap is maybe a little bit too small. Let's have a look. So I imagine it's from the steps. So you can see here, it doesn't know how to get to me because of those steps. That's fine for now. There's ways to fix that. You can just put an invisible ramp over it, which will help it get down. Easily fixed. Okay, so if your droid is now in the position that it will detect your character and fire a blaster, you're ready to move on to the next point. If it isn't doing this, if you're having issues, go back through the video, make sure you followed each of the steps properly. Some things to look out for. I'd make sure that your blaster source is far enough away from your droid that the bullet isn't spawning and instantly maybe stopping by the droid. I'd also have a little look at this section here. Make sure that you've got the right multiplier and the right plus there, otherwise that might not work. And just make sure that you followed everything as I have. So I've put all the code there on the screen. So you can have a little pause there and just double check that everything is the way it is.